Please join me in welcoming Senators Burton, Hughes, and West. Thank you for being here. Let me put you right next to me, if you would.
In the middle? You
Yes,
want me in the middle
next
between
to
these two
Senator
guys?
Burton, Mr. Hughes, and Senator West at the end, please.
Okay.
I'll be between you.
Good to see all of you. Appreciate you being here. Let's get this out of the way
no.
early. If any of you intends to body slam me, I'm going to take off my glasses because the vision plan at the Tribune is not that good. So,
That's a Republican move, not a Democrat.
that is a Republican move. Well, good one. Ordinarily, I'd ask you some kind of a high-minded question. Has this been a good session? And this has been a good session, particularly in terms of the Senate's work from Texas. But I kind of think we're past the point of high-minded. We're down to the stems and the seeds, as they say here. We're down to the very end of this session. So I want to go right to the speed round type questions. Are we going to get a budget, Senator Burton?
Well, of course we're going to get a budget.
You all are going to vote on a budget maybe even today? Is today the day?
No, it'll
No,
be
not today.
Saturday.
It'll be Saturday. So you all are going to pass a budget. No question about that. Senator Hughes?
We'll pass the budget.
You'll pass a budget?
Absolutely.
Do you like the budget?
I really honestly haven't had a chance to thoroughly take a look at it all. And so, we've been busy obviously doing
Right.
our,
But you like the last budget enough to vote for it?
Oh, yes,
Right.
absolutely, yes.
You're
yes.
assuming you will be a yes on the budget?
I need to take a look at this budget, the compromised budget, so.
Well, I wasn't expecting that answer, okay. But you're going to look at it?
Yes,
okay.
absolutely. We have to, we don't even have the final numbers yet.
Right.
Actually.
Senator
So-
Hughes, what about you?
I'm in. Overall, everything we've seen looks good.
Right.
Obviously, it's going to be some compromise. Nobody gets everything they want, but we get what we need.
Generally speaking, you feel like it's a good budget?
I do.
Senator West, there was criticism of Democrats the first round of this for everybody voting for the budget. There were some Democrats who complained that you all accepted a budget that was not good for your districts or your folks. And Democrats, not necessarily you, came back and said, well, wait till the budget comes back from compromise. We'll see if we vote for it at that point. You have a point of view on this budget?
I'm voting for the budget.
You are.
The reality is this. There's always give and take. And in terms of funding of priorities, the majority party is going to fund their priorities. That's what it gets down to.
Right. Elections have consequences.
Elections, you've heard me say it many times, it has consequences, and they're going to fund their priorities. The question is whether or not the other priorities that are in there for, say, in this case, the minority party, the Democratic Party, whether you can live with them. I'm very pleased with Article 2 in terms of the kinship money that's going in there and the foster care redesign. So that gives me a great deal of...
and as Vice Chair of Higher Ed, Senator West, you also came out of the compromise with a better budget for higher ed than you went in with,
Without question. I mean, the fact is we have more money in than we started with in the Senate budget for the general academic institutions.
Right. Are we going to have a compromise on the bathroom bill before the regular session ends, Senator West?
Let me go to the bathroom. I'll be right back.
All right. Which bathroom are you going to use, Senator West?
The one I've always used.
Same one. Original. Are we going to have a compromise?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it gets down to, what ends up happening, as you well know, it always ends up being three individuals that ultimately make the decisions. That's the Lieutenant Governor, the Governor, and the Speaker.
Right.
And so they have to make a decision as to whether or not what the House sent back to the Senate is going to be a compromise.
Right.
So far, the Lieutenant Governor said no to that. And so, it's going to be between the three of them to make that decision.
You only know what you've heard from the people at the top, as far as that goes.
That's exactly right.
Senator Burton, you were late to the party, but you ultimately did sign on and support the original legislation that came over from the Senate. What do you think about the compromise in the House, and do you think there will be a compromise ultimately before end of session?
I'm hoping there will be a compromise before end of session, but it's just like what Senator West just said, you never know. I don't know what to expect, but I do hope that there is before we gavel, sine die. I like what the Senate passed, and so
could you be a yes vote on the Patty Amendment, what we now know as the Patty Amendment, if that were the thing that were presented for you? If it were Patty Amendment or special session, and that were the only choice available to you.
Give me
the Patty Amendment is the slimmed down version of the slimmed down version of Senate Bill 6, limited just to schools.
Oh, right. I think it's a good thing for us to set policy at the state level for municipalities, schools, everybody. I think that's a good thing for us to be doing.
Right.
Like I've said before, I said it just last week in an interview I had, we don't need to be having these fights all over Texas at every level. you know, between the sessions that we have, right? So I think it's a good thing if we set policy once and for all, we, you know, get out of that debate, and so that's what I would prefer.
I guess I'm just asking, is a bill that is limited to schools and schools alone enough for you, or would you push the Senate to hold out for more?
Well, I don't think it's up to me alone. I think it's going to be to the body to decide that.
You do get a vote, though, right?
Yes, I do get a vote.
And you don't want to tell us what you'd vote. I'm getting a sense I'm not going to get this out of you, Senator. Senator Hughes, you were enthusiastic in supporting Senate Bill 6. What do you think about the House's proposed compromise right now?
I'm just one vote. The process is still going on. There's plenty of time, and I understand language is still going back and forth.
Right.
And so I think that's still where we are. A lot of people are looking at it, lawyers, non-lawyers.
You're not foreclosing on the possibility that compromise is possible?
Oh, I think compromise is definitely possible. And the idea of getting a bill that really fixes the problem in public schools is still alive. And as the session has gone on, situations have arisen around the state, which has given a lot of people pause about public schools in particular. We still have to think about protecting businesses from city ordinances that don't reflect the will of the people or their rights. But even as far as schools go, I think there's broad consensus something has to be done. Right.
How about on property taxes? You all are still apart on property taxes, Senator Burton. What about that? Are you going to come to some understanding on property taxes?
Again, I hope that we do. I will tell you, my district is clamoring for relief in property taxes. And so I am really hoping that we come up with something good that we can take back to our constituents, because it's a problem, and people, this is what I hear about all the time in the district. So
Senator West, again, we have a case where the House has come back and not given the Senate everything that it wants on its side of the Capitol, right? So
What's new?
I mean, what is your sense of whether there's compromise possible on this?
Well, it's a Republican issue,
right?
First of all, and if you're going to have real property tax relief, you got to deal with school property taxes. I think everyone out here recognizes that 53% of your tax bill ends up being school property taxes. But the reality is we hadn't addressed that. So again, until we address how we fund our public schools in the state of Texas in order to drive down those rates like we did years ago, we're not going to have real property tax relief.
The messaging, Senator West, on the property tax bill, at least coming from the Senate, has been questioned by some who've said that the numbers cited in terms of the actual relief for Texans may not be exactly as advertised, that we actually may not really see the benefits that are being promised to us. What do you think about that?
Well, like I said, if you look at it and you break it down, 53% of the tax rate is attributable to school property taxes. Right. And until you do something about that, you're not going to see real property tax relief.
Right. The sticking point in this, Senator Hughes, is whether the voters need to be involved in any kind of a rollback, right?
Seems to be.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
are you comfortable with what the House has provided you in terms of a slimmed down version of what the Senate is trying to do?
We're still going through it. In terms of the numbers, as you say, they've been sliced and diced in different ways. But in terms of raw numbers overall, the amount of property taxes that would be paid with and without Senate Bill 2, there's clearly a big difference. And we're talking about real savings. Depending on where you live, it matters. In rural Texas, that I largely represent, we don't see the growth that we're seeing in property taxes as we see in the suburban, faster growth areas. But statewide, it's a problem. And so we'd like to get there. Transparency is great. But I got to say, there's a lot of talk about local control. Voter approval is the ultimate local control.
Right.
Hard to argue with that.
So you're for, in the end, you want to see that be part of this conversation?
I'd sure like to.
And let me jump in there. I think that I agree that voters make a determination, but real decisions have to be made by the individuals that they elect at the local level. And if the local representatives, city council persons, school board members, mayors, et cetera, aren't doing the job they need to do as it relates to property tax relief and kind of balancing it out, then they'll be elected out. I think that local elected officials should be given, obviously, the flexibility to want to deal with real issues at the local level.
So I'm hearing from the three of you, budget is pretty much going to be taken care of. We're going to get to budget. But the property tax question and the bathroom questions are ones that the Lieutenant Governor has said those are must-pass issues for him. He wants to get those resolved. And the Governor has said something to the same effect. So we're going to be in a special session then, it sounds like, maybe, possibly, Senator West. What is your crystal ball tell you on whether we're going to be back after Monday?
Maybe, possibly.
Maybe, possibly. What do you think?
Tuesday? I don't know, to be honest with you. That's a decision.
Have you made vacation plans for June?
No, I haven't. My wife has, but I haven't. Okay.
What?
Which one of us is going to tell her, is my question.
I think you just did. But,
I'm glad to know she's on the live stream. That's good.
yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, the big three have to make that decision.
Yeah.
And hopefully they can get to a resolution of the issues.
Senator Hughes, are you thinking we're going to get out of here Monday?
My first term was 2003, and y'all will recall we were in session more days that year than Congress was. It was an unusual number of special sessions. You know how it goes. We get close to the end of session, and it seems like it's a foregone conclusion. We're going to have a special. And then as we get closer to the end, folks get more wanting to go home. I will say there are more moving parts this time. If it were just about the budget, I mean, this wouldn't be a concern. It looks like we're done unless some technicality hangs us up. But given the other issues that are out there and given that all three of the big three are engaged, I think the likelihood is higher than it was.
Yeah.
I think it's an above average likelihood of a special session, but that's just a guess.
Before I come to Senator Burton, let me go back to Senator West for a second. One of the questions I've asked a couple of different Democrats over the last couple of days is, do you understand the risk inherent in standing your ground on bathrooms or on property taxes and going into a special where the call could conceivably bring back from the dead a bunch of stuff that you think you killed? Now, Representative Anchia last week on the stage, Representative Coleman yesterday in our office said to us, we'd rather go ahead and kill stuff now and then take our chances on what happens in a special. But there has to be some risk acknowledged,
well, here's the deal.
Right?
You have to stand up for what you believe or you'll fall for anything, okay?
Right.
And yes, there may very well be a possibility those things happen.
Yeah.
But if you don't stand when you're supposed to stand, then you are forever bending your back and allowing people to ride your back.
So if the choice, Senator West, to you is you were a no vote on the bathroom bill.
Correct.
If the choice to you is let's hold off on any kind of bathroom bill passing during the regular and take our chances in a special, or accept something that would be more of a compromise against the possibility of something that I would like even less than a special, you would go ahead and say no bathroom bill now and we'll take our chances.
That's exactly right.
You would do that.
Yes.
Senator Burton, are you expecting a special?
I am. I actually am. I think we are. Again, the property taxes and the
Far enough
privacy.
apart?
I think so. My hope is, just as he said, there's still time. You know, people are tired. People want to go home.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of work done, right? But now between now and sine die, I'm still hoping that we can come to some solutions that everybody is okay with. But I'm expecting one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Senator Burton's only been here one session prior. Senator Hughes, you've been here in the House primarily, but you've been here for a while. Senator West, you've been here for a while. Senator Hughes referred to a lot of moving parts, maybe more moving parts than normal. I know what people want to say, and people keep saying, well, this is not really all that different than other sessions. It's always crazy at the end. Senator West, this seems like more of a mess here at the end, and this has been more of a difficult session than previous ones. Am I wrong about that?
Well, no, we have had obviously budget problems because of the economy. You know, we've been here before.
Started off with a tough session.
Well, yeah, so we start off, and if you think about the other sessions when we had budget issues, it's kind of about the same in terms of where we are in terms of funding and some of the issues. And the difference is the social issues. We have more social issues on the agenda than we've had before, the bathroom bill. And then obviously property tax relief in this particular area. So there are a lot of moving parts, but I think that you have to wait until about, frankly, Saturday, Sunday to kind of know where everything.
Then we'll really know. I don't remember. Again, my memory may not be as good as those of other people in the room or on stage, but I don't remember a scene like Senator West, like the one yesterday, with 30 members of the House crossing over to the Senate to effectively demand action of the lieutenant governor.
No, you're wrong. If you kind of think about it, when Bill Ratliff was a lieutenant governor.
So this would have been an 01.
Well, whenever.
01.
Okay. But I mean, the hate crimes bill, you remember?
Oh, okay.
Exactly. House members came over,
Yep.
and there were a bunch of speeches that were made. So it's not unprecedented that's happened before. And needless to say, when we had the Wendy Davis deal, the House members came
I mean, that was certainly that was a big end to it. But of course, that was
and then we had special session right
very
after.
special. Senator Hughes, there was a lot of discussion yesterday on the floor and in the previous couple days about inaction alleged by your former colleagues in the House on the Senate side. You know, the Senate has not taken up, referred to committee a number of our bills, and in fact, I believe Representative Dutton cited with an assist from Representative Kemple on the dais, you know, how many bills that were sent over from the House to the Senate were referred to committee in the 2003 session? All but one, or zero, or all but one, or zero, and then they get to this session and they say, 58. The Lieutenant Governor's office pushes back and says you really have to consider the percentage of bills that the Senate has passed that came over from the House versus the reverse. And in fact, they say the Senate has passed a higher percentage of the House's bills. I think 42% of the House's bills. The House only passed 40% of the Senate's bills. You think the Senate has behaved properly toward the House?
Now, those discussions do take place every session. I remember that as a House member.
Yeah.
I will say this, the 42% and 40% is as of 10 o'clock yesterday morning. As of 11 o'clock last night, the House has passed the Senate has passed 67% of the bills, the House and us, and the House has passed 60% of the Senate bills sent to them.
Right.
So that
the numbers are higher, but there's still a difference, and the Senate is ahead on that.
And you also have to remember that we received most of the House bills after May 1st.
Right.
Crunch time.
Right.
And we've processed those particular bills. So
Senator West, that's actually a line that we hear often from, again, the Lieutenant Governor's office and associates, that part of the problem here is that the House expects us to do all of our work in like 2 weeks because they send over that's the pushback, that they send over all this stuff so late. You're sympathetic to that argument?
Well, yeah, I am sympathetic to it because I have to work it.
Are you a senator first? You're a senator first and a Democrat second, right?
Well, yeah, but I've got to get the work done.
Yeah, right. And you think the House is making it difficult?
Well, I mean, if you send most of your bills over after May 1st, recognizing that there are deadlines imposed in May, then we should kind of rethink, hopefully the House will rethink when they start sending bills over to us.
You have a different perspective, Senator Byrd, because you've been here relatively much less time than these guys have. Is this the way you think it ought to be working? I mean, the tension between the two and this argument over who's doing what or who's doing enough or whatever else?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It makes me nuts.
Right.
It absolutely makes me nuts.
What's the problem here?
Well, I don't understand the inner that argument and the focus on that. And that's not from everybody. It's certainly certain members or certain things that you hear from the press and kind of the scuttlebutt. But no, the people out there do not even. They don't care. They don't know. They don't, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way.
But the intramural fights don't affect their lives so much as the issues affect their lives.
And they don't even know that they're going on. And again, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's because they're living their lives, going to work, and that kind of thing. They're not paying attention to this Senate bills, House bills, the intercapital squabbles that go on, and it makes me absolutely nuts.
Only we care about that stuff.
Yes,
and maybe not even we.
And most of them think we're in Washington anyway.
That's probably right.
Think what?
That we're in Washington, D.C.
Right. They're not actually plugged in enough to know what's really going on. So let's actually talk about what really does matter. Let's talk about the lives of people in the state and how they've been affected, Senator West, by this work. Is this a session that has produced work that will make the lives of people in this state better? Yes.
Some people.
Who?
I think in the area of health and human services, specifically in foster care and kinship care.
Yeah.
I think there's more awareness of that.
Came in with that as a priority for everybody, one of the rare bipartisan issues in this legislature, and came out of it actually with progress.
Absolutely.
Enough?
Yes.
Yeah, you're satisfied. Yeah, even though that the DFPS folks had asked for more money and there was a discussion.
Everybody always asks for more money.
Everybody asked for more money.
Yeah.
And there was the discussion of potentially more ambitious efforts on behalf of reforming the system. You're satisfied that you all did enough?
Yes.
Yeah. Who else benefited from this session? Who else came out of this better than they went into it?
I'll have to, and I haven't looked at the entire budget.
Right.
And so I'll have to look at it when they lay it out today in terms of to figure out exactly who benefited. I think that, I know that some of the general academic institutions were hurt.
Yeah.
In Article 3.
Again, less than they were going to be hurt.
Less than they were going to be hurt, though.
Right.
And I think Board of Security ended up making out, we funded that.
In fact, the compromise, as I understand it, is the same amount that you spent in the last year's budget.
800 million on that.
What happened to President, I'm going to build a wall? I thought you all were going to get relief on border security because of the administration.
You're asking me?
Yes, I am. I realize he wasn't your guy.
I didn't believe it in the first place.
You didn't actually, okay. Senator Hughes, is the state better off for the work of the Senate and the legislature generally? What is your assessment?
No question about it.
Yeah.
Look at the priorities that we came in with. Think about pro-life matters that are important to a lot of Texans. And in any case, it's protecting the most vulnerable among us. And let me say this briefly on that. Often in the pro-life movement, we're accused of being pro-birth, but not really pro-life.
Right.
But the Alternatives to Abortion program that comes alongside the mothers and helps them, gives them real tangible help, even after the baby comes along, with helping with tangible needs and parenting classes and support. That funding was preserved and actually going to be increased some. And again, these are all proven. Anybody who looks at the numbers sees that these things work. And so protection of innocent human life is important to all of us, and in this way, important to a lot of Texans. Criminal justice reform.
Yeah.
I know Senator Burton's worked on that a lot, as Senator West obviously has, and that's one of those.
Your second chances legislation, for instance, one example of something that happened.
You're very kind. We're excited about that.
Didn't get raised the age though.
That's right.
Right. So you just come back and fight another day on that.
Right.
Or hope that you go to a special and then somehow it comes back on the call, right?
That wouldn't be my decision, but if we're going to be here anyway, we could get it.
Yeah,
Hey,
Toss it in.
why not? Senator Burton, what happened in this session from your perspective that was good for the state? Had we advanced things in the last 140 or so?
Well, I look at it more in terms of the individual, right? So I'm always, from my perspective, which might be a little bit different than others, is how much overreach of government is in their lives. I look at it from freedom, liberty, those kind of perspectives, and
Right.
I will tell you,
You're for less government, not more going in the door. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, are we intruding in people's lives more? Is government at all levels intruding in people's lives more? Are we taking more of their money and putting it into things that government shouldn't be doing because it's not a core function of government, which we still do too much of?
Give me an example of something that happened this session where government was pulled back in terms of its overreach, or where you were no longer spending as much as you were before because that's the way this ought to work. Give me an example of something.
Well, it's not so much an example of in hard, like in a particular, what am I trying to say, a hardcore way. What I do more is behind the scenes work on particular bills, and well, we all do. Forgive me. Sorry, forgive me.
A lot of your criminal justice.
Right, exactly.
And
so, we're constantly working behind the scenes on individual bills to pull out things that, might be too intrusive, certainly criminal justice things, Senator West and Senator Hughes as well. We all work on that. That affects a lot of lives. And, is the penalty for the crime matching up? Are we putting more barriers in place from the government for people to, not be able, after they have committed a crime and done their time, as Senator West and I say a lot, are we putting more barriers in place that they cannot go on and be productive citizens? We're trying to work on those kinds of things as well. So it's not, this one big thing. It's individual things constantly that we're working on behind the scenes on bills, so that by the time they get to the floor, we've taken out the stuff that I consider bad
Sort
and more intrusive.
Thematic as much as anything else.
Right, correct.
Senator Hughes, I know that it's respectful to wait to perform the autopsy on a dead body for a period of time, but I want to go right to what happened on school finance. I don't want to wait. So we know as of yesterday that the body has been pronounced.
Oh.
What happened? And is this good? Can you help us understand, unravel for us or unpack for us what happened on school finance? What do you think happened?
It's been frustrating, I think, for everyone involved. And so the original House Bill 21, which had some good stuff in it. Of course, the funding came from a delaying of the permanent school fund payment, which has been done before.
Not the first time that's happened.
I have voted for that in the past.
As a House member, right?
You bet. We've all voted for that, all the members at the time, so I'm not criticizing that.
Right.
That's where the money was going to come from, and I think the House and Senate agreed later that wasn't going to happen. And so then, when the bill came over to the Senate, Chairman Taylor was trying to find other money and was able to cobble together a little over $500 million to solve some of the problems in school finance, some of them. A little bit of an overall increase, dealing with a small school penalty, with some of the odd things that, because of the patchwork system, are creating real inequities. He had some real money to fix those things. And of course, in the bill was also not a broad school choice plan, but one for special needs students in pretty limited circumstances. If someone is a big school choice advocate, they'd be pretty disappointed in that. But I don't think there's any way to argue with the fact that new money and those genuine fixes that all the school community said they were for, as much as they liked that, the presence of any type of school choice, even a narrow, limited, really tamped down special needs school choice, that was enough to kill the whole deal.
Am I correct that the modest ESA program that was inserted into the school finance bill when it was sent back to the House was unfunded, correct?
No, sir. Chairman Taylor addressed that particularly, and the money was there. The money was in the budget.
I thought I heard Chairman Huberty, Senator West, say yesterday that he was concerned that a bunch of stuff was put in and there was not money to pay for it.
Well, it's just, and how many times have we heard that on both sides?
Right.
Okay? We were at 500 and something million, and the House was a billion, whatever it is. And so, there would have been room to kind of narrow that gap.
In the end, if they wanted this bill,
This
you
was
could have
all
found the money.
about putting in there that education savings account.
Right.
The House has sent a message that they're not for vouchers.
Yeah.
Bottom line. And so, you know,
I think there were more than 100 votes procedurally. It wasn't a straight away vote on up or down on vouchers in the House, but I thought during the budget discussion that the House just was very clear in its desire not to have any kind of voucher program.
that's exactly right.
Right.
And obviously, you've got to respect the wishes of the House, just as we want them to respect the wishes of the Senate.
Right.
So they've got to be able to come to
Now,
some
my
sort of
understanding
compromise.
of the sequence yesterday was Senate sent the bill back over. Chairman Huberty got up yesterday with members of the Education Committee around him, and I actually thought he was going to say, I am so unhappy with what the Senate did to this bill that I'm just going to pull it down. But instead he said, we're going to send it to conference. And then later in the day, Chairman Taylor said, we're not going to go to conference. And so then the bill became dead. So did the House kill the bill, Senator West, or did the Senate kill the bill? Because I saw a release from the Lieutenant Governor that said the House rejected HB 21, and I thought, it looked to me like the Senate decided not to go to conference. I'm not sure the House did it. It looked like the Senate did it.
I think the legislature did it.
Right. How's that?
Both sides.
Both
Yeah.
sides.
Both sides. You know, and until we can get through with this, come to some sort of compromise, if you will,
Yeah.
on the issue of vouchers, it's going to be an issue.
This is how it's going to be.
This is how it's going to be.
Right.
That's a major issue.
Yeah.
The Lieutenant Governor is pro-choice and wants education savings
Well,
accounts.
let's be specific
Yeah,
about
I was like, "Ugh."
That's why I said education
I
savings
think
accounts.
I think Alan Blakemore needs to be revived. Who has the paddles?
That's the very reason
Right,
I
yeah.
said, okay,
Yeah.
as it relates to education.
Right, yeah.
Again, education options. And the House isn't there. And so there's
Yeah.
going to have to be some
In the
sort of-
meantime, we're adding 82 million kids to the 82,000. It may seem like 82 million. We're adding 82,000 kids to the public school system of the state of Texas a year. So is coming out of a session with that number, which is not going to change regardless of what you do.
That's right.
Is coming out of the session with no change to school finance going to be doable? Are we going to be okay?
Well, you know, given the Supreme Court's ruling, that option is blocked
They
off.
gave you cover by not putting the fabled gun to your heads, right?
Well, and yeah, and you see what's happened. We hadn't been able to come up with a compromise. I do know last night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, the last bill that was considered by the Senate, House Bill 22, we put in a study, a commission to study public finance.
Yeah.
And that won't solve the problem, but the fact of the matter is that we're going to have to monitor what's going on in terms of our school system, obviously, and make certain if there are any holes.
At the end of the day, you're not doing a tweak to the system of the sort that was imagined.
No,
going
not
in.
at all. Not at
But
all.
how can you
Senator
can't- I
Burton.
don't- You know, you said it gave you cover, the lawsuit gave you cover, but I don't think we look at it that way. I certainly didn't. I know when I was, during the interim, when I was going around and talking about what we were going to be doing down here in Austin, you know, I talked about that, the ruling, and I said, but we all know it's certainly an imperfect
Yeah.
funding system. I think, you know, across the board, we all know that.
I guess what I'm referring to, Senator, is that often it takes the court saying you must act for the legislature to act
I
on
don't-
difficult stuff, and in this case,
Right.
they did not force you to act.
They did not, but I don't think that we're not either. Like you said,
How are
the
you
commission-
acting,
How can
Senator?
you do it? Well, I don't think that something that big can be done in one session. I think it's
Well, it's stipulated. It's probably a longer term process
right,
than 140
and I
days.
think you know, from my perspective, we're starting on that. We may have a different.
I mean, well, the only thing we're really funding is growth, though. That's about it.
Right, but
Right.
it's not like we're, you know, I never expected, and I told people that
Right.
in the interim, it's like, we're not going to go into this session and just have a new funding system and work it all out. You
Right.
know, there's so many different, obviously, opinions and players and, you know, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, and it's just not going to be done in one session. So I don't think, I had no expectation of that, and I said that during the interim to everybody. It's like, this is something that we're going to have to work on, massage,
So you
figure
don't
out.
consider this to be a miss or a failure on the part of the legislature. This is the first pebble in the path,
absolutely.
basically.
That's the way I
Right.
look at it, and I think
Right.
everybody
No,
does.
no, I mean,
don't-
not from a historical perspective. How long have we been dealing with this issue?
Right,
It's like
right,
it
From the
just
historical
keeps coming back,
perspective.
right?
That's
Keeps coming
right.
back, right?
That's exactly
right. 100 years.
Senator
Exactly.
Hughes, some Democrats in the House have observed that at a time when fewer people are crossing over the border into Texas, you put $800 million in for border security, but at a time when many more people are crossing over the border into the public schools, you didn't put more money into the public school system. Is there something wrong with that?
Well, the original proposal from the Department of Public Safety was going to be to ask for half the money they were getting before again. So not the 800 million, but an extra $500 million. or
I
so.
remember hearing, different numbers.
But as you mentioned, the new administration has indicated there's going to be a different approach, and
Yeah.
that doesn't happen overnight if it does happen. And so obviously, You can't just stop everything. I'm hopeful that the feds step
Yeah.
up and do what they're supposed to, and we can sell them some helicopters and boats and
Yeah.
get some of our money back. And we're still haven't forgotten about sending them another bill for all that we've spent so far. But obviously, we can't just stop everything.
So you're going to send a second invoice to the administration after the first one didn't get paid to try to get
Absolutely.
reimbursed?
Absolutely.
Even though it's your guys in there as opposed to their guys, you're going to make them pay you, huh?
That's my vote.
That's your vote. When you go back home to your district and you talk to your superintendents or parents of the schools, do you think they're going to be happy with the result of the school finance discussion this session?
Superintendents that I've spoken to are going to be disappointed, like we're all disappointed.
Right.
In particular, on what we're going over about House Bill 21.
Right. Yeah. But it is what it is.
At this point, unless there's a way to revive that in the last few days.
Right.
So let me ask you about the degree to which Texas is going to be spending time in court going forward. So we have a voter ID bill that has now passed and that will get signed by the governor, but there's not any certainty that the new voter ID bill is going to keep us out of harm's way in the way that the old voter ID bill put us in harm's way. We're in court over redistricting, and that is unresolved, and that there really hasn't been very much movement at all on redistricting, maybe no movement.
No movement.
No movement at all on that. The omnibus abortion bill that Senator Hughes talked about may land us back in court again. Don't know. I mean, there was, in the House at least, I heard discussions of some of the things that were passed in the House, possibly walking up to the line of causing litigation yet again. Should we be concerned about stuff that we're doing that is ultimately going to end us up in court, not only cost us money, which is sort of less the issue, but just tied up in litigation? Do you worry, Senator Burton, that the legislature is knowingly putting itself from a legal standpoint in a pickle?
No.
Because?
Well, I don't. I mean, that is the process, right? If we want to be, if things need to be taken to the court and decisions rendered, that's the way it works. I'm not worried about that, or I don't think we're on a wrong path or anything. What we're doing is legislating, and if it needs to go to the court system, then it can, and we'll go from there.
Senator Hughes, I could add to that the sanctuary cities legislation that you all passed and the governor signed. There are already a certain number of municipalities that have already said they're suing over that. And for that matter, I might put the bathroom legislation in that same conversation. We don't yet know what the resolution of that's going to be, but
And straight ticket.
straight ticket. There's a lot of work coming at it. I understand that the state is governed by the legislature and not the courts.
Right.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the courts are a component of this conversation
That's right.
now or later.
That's
Well,
right.
I realize the question is a broad one, but we get a little in detail thinking about voter ID. The Fifth Circuit gave us some guidance, and they said if you do X, Y, and Z, we believe you're constitutional. And so the bill that was passed by the House and the Senate does X, Y, and Z. So at least as far as that one goes,
You feel like you're good on that.
as far as that one goes, we are following to a T the guidance given us by the federal court. So at least on that one, hopefully we're going to be out of a lawsuit.
Yeah.
As far as the pro-life stuff goes, there's a lot of armchair quarterbacking by everybody in the process.
Always.
Imagine that.
Always.
But you may recall 4 years ago when we were considering the 20-week ban, the idea that a little baby in her mother's womb should be protected after 5 months of life. When that bill was being discussed, there was a loud and vociferous protest that this would be struck down. The 20-week ban, that portion of that bill was never even challenged. It's the law today.
Right, that survived.
So we shouldn't let fear of the courts keep us from doing the right thing.
Right. Are you worried on voter ID, Senator West, more than Senator Hughes is, that we're still in some peril?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
And I think that some of the issues were in fact addressed, and the state may very well be in a better position, but I don't think that they're out of the woods on that yet.
Yeah.
When you begin to look at redistricting, when you begin to look at straight ticket, taking away the right to do a straight ticket, all of those issues will be in litigation, I assure you.
Right.
In fact, when Kelly Hancock was laying out the bill, the straight ticket bill in the Senate, I was deposing him on the Senate floor, asking him questions that I know will be
Are
asked.
going to get asked eventually.
Right,
Do you worry that a Sessions-led Justice Department, as opposed to a Holder-led Justice Department, will ultimately, at the top of the food chain, produce less of an opportunity for you to challenge this stuff?
Yes. That has crossed my mind.
Right.
And hopefully, the courts will obviously be the impartial arbiter of those issues, and that's
Right.
what we've got to be able to assure ourselves of.
Let me flip the question around and ask not about the legal peril potentially, but the question of the Texas brand out in the world. Because we all care about Texas, we all love Texas, we all want Texas to be a great brand, a shining brand out around the country, from an economic development standpoint and from every standpoint.
Right.
So if you read the headlines, which you should probably avoid doing in the national press about the work of the session, we have a discriminatory bathroom bill, we have a discriminatory sanctuary cities bill, where we've been found to be discriminatory on redistricting, we have this voter ID bill where there's some question of discrimination. You know, you would get the idea, reading what other people say about us and the work of this legislature, that this state is essentially saying to the rest of the world, this is not a friendly place, this is not a compassionate place, this is not a loving place. Does that worry you, Senator?
Sure. I mean, we are what we are because we're what other people perceive us to be.
Yeah.
And that's our social self. So if we're perceived as being unfriendly,
Yeah.
then, you know, obviously people will react to that particular perception. Is the glass half empty or half full? Well, it's half full as far as I'm concerned. There's a lot of work to be done. Yes, there is. And elections have consequences. My Republican brothers and sisters have decided that these issues are important to them, and they have a right to carry them forth within the legislative process, just like we have a right, if we believe they're unconstitutional, to fight them. And people recognize that there is a fight as it relates to some of these issues, and we have to continue to do that, but that's part of the process.
And at the end, the voters are going to be the ones to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to that.
That's exactly right.
Senator Hughes, do you worry about the perception of Texas out in the world coming out of a session like this one?
Well, I think you said it very well. If you look at the national media, the national mainstream media, traditional media, whatever term we use, if you listen to them, oh, it's a horrible place. Yet, fewer and fewer people we know for various reasons are listening to the traditional national media, and that's a great thing. We're all for free speech, we're all for choices, we're all for more options, and folks continue to vote with their feet, right?
Yep.
Jobs,
Yep.
companies continue to move here and expand here, workers continue to come here.
Population is growing.
Yes, sir.
Precipitously.
Yes, sir. So, and again, we don't. I don't want to say this with too much pride. We want to get it right. We want to learn from our mistakes. We always want to do better.
Yeah.
But no, sir, we're not concerned about what the New York Times says.
Ditto.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you care about what the New York Times says, but I think I know the answer to that. You're up again in 2018.
Yes.
And you're running again.
Yes.
And you've said so for sure.
Yes.
Right. You just won, so you're not up again. You're up again.
Yes.
You're running again for sure?
Yes.
Okay. Let me quickly, before we go to the questions, let me just ask you about the tension in the building, House versus Senate, particularly Speaker versus Lieutenant Governor, and about the role of the governor in all this. Can you give me an assessment of the leadership of these bodies and how you think the leadership has or has not played a role in this session?
I think it's kind of just like any other session.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is that you have a House position, a Senate position, and the governor is supposed to try to bring them all together.
Yeah.
And so the question is whether or not who's going to play the strongest hand, if you will.
Who's had the strongest hand this session?
Well, it's supposed to be the governor.
Right.
I think that Governor Patrick has had a very strong hand this session.
Yeah. Are you sympathetic to the idea that the governor has not, there's some who say, that, at least up to this point, that the governor has not played enough
Well, I mean,
of a visible...
the question is when is the appropriate time for him to play his hand?
Right.
Okay? And I think that this is the appropriate time for him to start playing his hand.
Well, it's kind of like the last inning. It's like the last half inning.
Well, I mean, he's
right?
I've seen some sign of him playing his hand. Yeah.
Right.
And obviously he has the power of veto, and also he has the power of special session.
Right. Do you, as Senator Burton, Senator Hughes, do you put, as some in the Senate do, the place that we are in this session on the Speaker or on the House leadership, or do you think this is just run-of-the-mill, par for the course stuff?
Dynamics, nothing new.
Yeah.
When I first got here, it was Craddock and Dewhurst, good, and Governor Perry, good men. They met together every week at least, and I think that system's been going on for a while.
The personalities ultimately drive this, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you think the governor should be more active at this point in the session?
You hit it on the head for me. Personalities, right? I mean, people govern differently. People have different personalities. We kind of end up comparing them to previous ones. We don't know how much. Perception is definitely not always reality, right? And
There's a
even though-
behind the scenes.
Right, and even though we all talk and act and think like we know what's going on, we
Yeah.
don't. And so, what you see out there is not necessarily what's going on behind the scenes. And some people are more vocal, some people are less vocal, or some people do things behind the scenes more. You don't know what's going on, between them. And so, we're just gonna let them be who they are, right?
Okay, let's go to questions. Agnes has a microphone there. We'll be happy to have anybody raise your hand. We'll be bringing you into the conversation.
Do you need some water? Or do you have it over there?
Sir,
I've got mine. No, I've got mine. You need some. You need some.
My question is for Senators Burton and Hughes. Over the last two sessions, the top priority of the legislative priority of the Republican convention delegates has been constitutional carry. This session, there wasn't even a bill filed on that subject. Two-part question. A, why was that? And B, in the event of a special session, would you support adding constitutional carry to the call?
do you accept the premise that that's the top priority of the Republicans?
Well, you're saying it's in the platform, is that correct?
It was number one on
Right.
the legislative priorities this time around, and last time it was the only priority set by the.
And you're saying in the platform?
I'm saying in the legislative priorities that preceded the
Right.
platform.
Is it a priority of yours, Senator Burton?
Well, certainly. I mean, here, and I come from the activist background, so I fully and totally understand what you're talking about. But the fact of the matter is, and I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, we didn't, from my perspective, get to where we are overnight. We're not going to get to where we want to be overnight either. And as an activist, I remember being very frustrated and wanting things to happen quickly. But once you get into the legislative process, it happens much slower. And frankly, that slowness is something that we need to be appreciative of at times, because we could have a lot more overreach of government in our lives if it did work faster. So while we get frustrated that things don't happen from our perspective quickly, we also need to look at it from the perspective of we better be glad it doesn't work faster, because we could have a lot more intrusive government in our lives.
Why do you, so are you saying that you would be supportive of constitutional carry legislation if it
Absolutely, absolutely.
if it comes
It's
up?
our Second Amendment right.
Just
absolutely.
hasn't come up yet. Senator Hughes?
Absolutely.
I think it was Frederick Douglass that said 3 boxes protect our liberty: the ballot box, the jury box, and the cartridge box. And he was right about that. And we understand that fundamentally, but this stuff is scary for a lot of folks. 20
Right.
years ago, the
Right.
idea of a concealed handgun license
Right.
had people really concerned. Road rage, OK Corral. It didn't happen. Open carry was the same way. Constitutional carry is the next step in that process. So we need to listen to the people of Texas and look at the Constitution, be smart about it, and keep moving forward. So you bet.
Senator West, I seem to remember some very memorable conversations with you and Senator Huffines on this subject in the last session.
I supported
great.
my colleague.
You did support you.
Yes.
Are you surprised that this has not been an issue in this session? I mean, it's jam-packed with a lot of other stuff that you can't get to everything necessarily, right?
No, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. You think the Senate is, if you did an up or down vote in the Senate, that you would have enough votes to pass constitutional carry?
No.
Do you all think that there are the votes there now?
I haven't polled it, but I would think so.
Yeah.
You both
I think law enforcement would. Law enforcement is a strong lobby here.
Right.
And they, rank and file, and also the administration has been
Right.
against
Has
this.
a concern about it? Okay. Ma'am.
So the court has suggested that we might have a special session on redistricting. And my first question is, will we, number one? And
Yeah.
if we do, can it be restricted to only that topic?
Well, a special session, Senator Hughes, you know how this works. The governor calls a special session. He can decide to call and add to the call anything he
Right.
wants,
Right.
right?
That's exactly right. Absolutely within the governor's discretion. And as you know, non-controversial matters tend to get filed, and if no one objects, those can still get done. But the big stuff has got to be put on there by the governor, either the initial call or with them expanding the call as we go.
Are any of you hearing about the possibility of coming back to deal with redistricting?
I haven't.
I can't say that I have.
Okay. Ma'am.
Hi, I'm Connie Gray with Texas Adoptee Rights, and I have a question looking forward to the next elections. Senator Hughes, thank you so much for your unwavering support of adoptee rights in this last session. Senators Burton and Senators West, what is your stand going into the next election cycle so our members can know? Do you support adult adoptees having their original birth certificates based upon all the research, that there's no viable reason not for them to have that, just to let people who are going to be voting in the next election know?
Well, frankly, I haven't formulated a position on the one way or the other. I'm open to considering it, but I haven't formulated a position on it, though.
Okay, Senator Burton?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the problems, we talk, because like I've mentioned many times lately, on each particular issue, there's a lot of nuances within it, right? So certainly there's, I don't know how much other people will understand this. I come from, my girls are adopted, so I very much in the adoption world, so I understand it. But, there are concerns about that we have to weigh as well, even though I'm for adult adoptees having, their birth certificate. But you have to think about, say, 25 years ago, a birth mother went into a contract of sorts. It might have been somebody that did not want or went into this contract thinking that they were going to go on and live their lives without the possibility of the child that they placed in a home contacting them. I mean, this doesn't really exist so much anymore. It was just the time then. And so, you have to think through those kinds of things when we're looking at that kind of issue. Are we infringing on somebody that went into, somewhat of a contract 25 years ago, having an expectation of a privacy? I'm not saying I am or not. I'm just saying there's lots of issues behind that. So, when you say, are you for this? You can say, yes, I'm for this, but also you have to be very careful about the legislation that's being passed, because there's nuances within it. So, again, I talk a lot about this, that you can be for an issue, but a particular bill in front of you might not be what's good. And I'm not even talking about any bills that were in front of us during this session. Don't think I'm talking specifically about that. But I always get a little nervous telling people I'm for something, but then when a bill comes in front of you and you're not for it. Actually, school choice is the perfect example, and it's really where forgive me, I'm going off a little bit here, but it's where I really learned this lesson last session. I'm for school choice. A bill came before us that had school choice based on the franchise tax. And I campaigned the whole time and getting rid of the franchise tax, right? And it's like, well, if we had passed school choice based on the franchise tax, how are we ever going to get rid of the franchise tax, right? So I caution everybody when you ask me particularly, are you for this? Yes, but does this particular legislation do that? I don't know, so.
Because Pence passed it in Indiana in 16.
Right.
Agnes, you got right here, great, sir.
Yes, given the size and population of our state, should we be looking now at annual sessions of the legislature or longer regular sessions?
Absolutely not.
No.
Maybe 2 days every 140
Right,
years.
right, absolutely.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely.
You're going to put us
Holy
out
cow.
of business if you do that.
Yeah, no.
Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. Given that half the children who show up to kindergarten in Texas are ill-prepared and therefore highly unlikely to be successful, as our commissioner has stated, and given the fact that before the commissioner was commissioner, he advocated for eliminating 12th grade and putting the money in pre-K, Senator West in particular, would you be in support of eliminating funding for 12th grade and putting all of that money into the early years so that these kids have a chance of succeeding?
To answer the question, yes, and I would make it optional with the school districts. And I was the one that passed the bill when Mike Morath was on the school board in Dallas. I passed that particular bill to allow a pilot project. I think that you're correct. We're not putting enough money into pre-K, and we need to put more money. We should have fully funded what the governor requested as it relates to pre-K.
Why didn't you fund it? Not you personally, but why didn't the royal you fund it?
Again, there are decisions.
Yeah.
It's just like this, and all of y'all know this. We're in the room on some decisions, then there's another level, and then there's another level. I was in the room in terms of the initial conversation, but these latter conversations hadn't been in the room. So to answer the question, I don't know.
Right.
I think when you start talking about the governor, I think that he should continue to throw his weight behind additional funding for pre-K. Because you're right, Bill, if we don't watch these kids do our best to help these kids when they're coming into the process,
Right.
we're going to end up with the same type of result. Let me put this out there too. When you begin to look at the negative indices as relates to dropouts, school to prison pipeline, et cetera, you have African American males. And Harold Dutton is right when he articulated we need to look at dealing with the problems with African American males coming into our public school system. If we can deal with that, then we should be able to turn this entire system around. And hopefully, over the course of the interim, we will see some positive steps towards dealing with that particular issue.
Senator Burton, pre-K is not without controversy.
Yeah.
Right. Can you talk from your perspective about what happened on pre-K or didn't happen this session and why?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking there. I will tell you from my perspective.
Well, the governor made it very clear last session and this session that he wanted to see pre-K funded to the level that he requested and wanted to see the type of pre-K that he articulated he wanted, and didn't get what he wanted last session, enough that he came back and called out that issue specifically, I believe, in his State of the State,
Yes.
and said, maybe you didn't hear me last time. And the result of the legislature was to very pointedly not give him what he wanted again. So I'm wondering, what's the deal?
Well, I'm not for pre-K. I didn't vote for pre-K. I don't believe in it. I'm very disturbed by how you presented that question. I mean, what a horrible worldview to say that these kids that don't go to pre-K are instantaneously, going to fail. I mean, this rhetoric that we have right now about this is unbelievable. Of course, you can show me statistics. I can show you statistics that show you just the opposite. I didn't even go to kindergarten, and I'm a state senator right now, it's unbelievable.
That will be a Twitter card before 10 this morning. That will be all over Twitter.
I mean,
It
it's
sure will be.
ridiculous. It gets worse and worse and
But
worse.
see, but Senator Burton, you and I will disagree on this. And,
Absolutely,
the
we will.
reality is that I respect your right to have that opinion.
Sure.
But again, when you look at the statistics, there are certain kids that need that jump start, so to speak.
At 3 and 4 years old. That's what pre-K is. 3 and 4 years old.
There are certain kids.
I mean, does everybody realize that? They are
there are certain
babies.
kids that need a jump start.
What are they going to jump start to?
Well,
What are they going to do at 3 and 4 years old? I mean, I understand your big picture perspective, but I reject that they are going to be failures if they don't go to pre-K. I mean, that is absolutely unbelievable. It's frustrating.
Senator
It's
West, let me let you
frustrating.
respond, and then I'm going to force Senator Hughes to choose between you.
Well, I mean,
Senator Hughes is like,
we will.
ooh, I didn't know this was going to take this turn.
The reality is that when you begin to look at the numbers and the statistics, it may not be that all children need some sort of pre-K program.
Right, absolutely.
It may not be that all, but some kids do. Okay, and so the question is how do we provide for those kids with the recognition that they are 3, 4 years old.
Right.
But the problem is that we have mothers, we have parents that are not being parents to those kids.
Okay.
Hold on, let me finish.
Exactly. No, I'm agreeing with you, Senator.
Okay.
I'm agreeing
and so
with you.
We also have parents that are becoming parents that haven't even completed high school.
I agree with you.
Okay, and so the question
So
is,
pre-K is
when
the
you end up
answer?
that's
We
part
feel
of-
like we're back on the
that's
floor,
part
don't
of-
we?
That's part of the answer. And so when you have those type of kids being born in those type of situations, we need to have some ability to make certain that they get a jump start in terms of education.
Senator Hughes, you've had time to formulate a thoughtful answer.
He's like,
It doesn't offend anybody. Where are you on this?
So Bill invoked Commissioner Mike Morath, and I do want to say that I'm a big fan. He's a reformer, he's an innovator. My school superintendents, many of whom were nervous about him, most of them, all of them really like him.
Yep.
As far as I can tell, he really is trying to do the right thing. He's got great skills to do it with, and so we're thankful to have him. I had not heard the proposal to get rid of the 12th grade, put everything in pre-K. I'd never heard that. I'm not for that.
no, absolutely
Are
not.
you
No.
for pre-K?
If you look at the numbers on pre-K, when I first got here, this was a big debate. Did we go to all-day pre-K? Did we go to universal mandatory pre-K? And at that time, the studies that we saw showed that those children in pre-K, when they got to 3rd grade, when they got to kindergarten, were ahead of their peers who didn't go to pre-K. But by the 3rd grade, you couldn't really tell the difference between them.
That's
That's just what I think most of the studies showed that. Now, Governor Abbott came to us last session and said, okay, we're learning how to do pre-K. We got this high-quality pre-K. Give me some money to do this, and we'll see if it's going to work. And that was how he sold it last time, as I recall. And honestly, and so he was funded at what he requested last time. His concern during his State of the State was that our filed budgets did not have it this time. So I'm open to it. Some of those kids really do need help. We want to help them and we come alongside them if we can. But let's make sure we're really helping and we're putting the money in the best place.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, again, you pointed out the problems, which I believe in, but I don't think the answer is pre-K for the children. I think there's deeper problems in other ways that we can figure this out, rather than pre-K for 3- and 4-year-old children.
Ma'am.
Babies.
Senator Burton,
Oh.
you have said that
Where is
you
this?
and Republicans
Oh,
are
I'm
for-
sorry.
for
Sorry.
local control, and yet then you turned around and said this morning that you think the state should have uniform laws all across. So which are you in favor of, local control or state control?
I'm for state control on the issues of, so first of all, let me go back and explain so everybody can understand, because everybody acts like I'm being hypocritical and I am not. The states were here first. The states created the federal government, and then the states created the political subdivisions. So we have given the political subdivisions the power that they do have. We can certainly take that power back. We push back on the federal government because they are, I can do that. I can push back on the federal government because we created the federal government. And I can say at the same time that you are overreaching to political subdivisions because we created them too. So there is no hypocrisy here. Unfortunately, we've just forgotten these things. And we've forgotten how we were created and where the powers lie. So in some things, I mean, yes, I want the political subdivisions to do the things that they need to be doing, but the problem lies, and we've come to a point where political subdivisions are becoming bigger and bigger and doing more and more things that they shouldn't be doing. And it is the state's right to say, you need to stop. So, it's up to the legislature to determine that and step in.
That's it? Okay, we've hit the time when we need to let these guys go back and solve all of our problems that they haven't solved yet, so let's let them go do that. Please give Senators Burton, Hughes, and West a hand. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you again.